You're welcome back to the Pulse on the Joy News channel on your Multi TV. Now, as the deadline nears for small political parties to satisfy requirements to keep them in operation, some of them have been rushing in to file their documents at the EC headquarters. Let's now go there live and speak to Joseph Opoku Gakpo, who's been monitoring events there for us. Joseph, good afternoon to you. Okay, we'll try and establish contact with Joseph shortly. He is monitoring developments at the Electoral Commission headquarters. But we're joined in the studio by representatives of the NDP and the CPP. To my immediate left is the communications director for the CPP, Abdul Kadri Rauf. He's joining us in the studio. Also joining us in the studio for the NDP, we're joined in the studio by the General Secretary, Alhaji Mohammed Frimpong. Thank you, sir, for joining us here in the studio this afternoon. We'll also be joined on the line by Kofi Akpalo of the IPP on what exactly is happening with them and trying to understand whether or not this deadline has been met or not. Let me start with Kadri from the CPP. Kadri, deadline is today. Have you met all your requirements?
Yeah, thank you, Francis. Before I respond to your question, I want to make a very quick correction. You labeled the Convention People's Party as a small party. That is not true. Okay. The CPP is not a small party. Okay. If you know the historical significance that the Convention People's Party represents in the body politics of Ghana, and then, you know, the volume, loss of, ideas.
Okay, CPP is a political party. You can forgive me for the word small.
Wonderful.
Let's move on.
Thank you. I think that the Convention People's Party, as we have always said proudly, that we have met the deadline. And even before this rush hour, the CPP was there yesterday. And I can state authoritatively that the CPP was the first political party to comply with that, order that was given by the Electoral Commission. So
and you complied yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday. And
so how many offices do you have now across the country?
Oh, the CPP has more than 144 offices across the country.
Was it about going over 100 or being in every district?
Well, I think when you are going to look at it according to the law, it's being in the districts, you understand. But the Convention People's Party, we have gone beyond that because we have said repeatedly that our party is a mass party. So it means that in every nook and cranny of the country, we have to have representation. So that is why we took it upon ourselves to make sure that particularly in those constituencies that we are going to file, for parliamentary candidates, we would have to create offices so that they could have a converging place.
But Kadri, we know also that for the requirements as set out by the Electoral Commission, you need to have offices in all districts in the country. So when you say you're having 144, that's clearly not all the districts in the country. I said
we have more than 144 as at now.
Do you have more than 200?
No, we do not have more than 200, but I know that we have more than 144.
Then how does that meet the requirements of the Electoral Commission?
But when you look at the formula that the Electoral Commission has given, even if we are going strictly by that formula, I think that we do not need up to 144 in order to qualify for that formula that they said.
How many do you need then?
I think we needed about 130 or something, but we have... 230. So when you do the mathematics, I think that if we are going to reduce it into numbers, we need about 120 or so, to meet up the requirement. But I want to make the point very clear that as I speak, we have more than 144 offices across the country.
And they are all functional?
Underway.
They are all functional?
Yeah, they are functional. Like I said, we have taken a strategy to ensure that in all the constituencies that we are going to put up a parliamentary candidate, we would actually open an office so that it could serve as a converging, a meeting, avenue. So we are not taking that decision lightly.
Okay.
And I am very positive that by the end of this month, we would have gotten up to 200 offices. Because we are
end of this month? This is actually the last day in this month of May.
I'm talking about, I'm talking about June. We are just entering June. Pardon my language. I'm talking about June.
So end of June, you'll be in every district?
Yeah, we would have actually crossed about 200 because as the day goes by, more people are registering their enthusiasm to file and contest on behalf of the Convention People's Party.
So those who file will determine where you build the offices?
Not that as such, but as I said, it is actually a first step. We think that for us to have members of parliament who would truly represent the Convention People's Party, we have to create an enabling environment, and getting party officers for them is a first step.
Okay, let me speak to Alhaji from the NDP. Alhaji, good afternoon to you once again. For the NDP, have you met this requirement?
Good. Let me say that, just like my brother Kadri said, the whole concept of small parties is a misnomer. I think political parties are known by their vision and potent ideas that they want to bring to bear on governance. Maybe other considerations like which party have been in government, then that would be okay. But let me put it on record here that that whole idea of small, it should not sink into our psyche. That's very, very important. But as far as the National Democratic Party is concerned, we had filed our audited accounts much earlier. It's just a requirement. We did so somewhere in March and then April, okay? Just doing the right thing, as it were. So we had then sent that one. Now the issue of officers. As a matter of fact, in 2012, we have had officers all over the places. But then, resource, constraints makes some of the tenancy agreement and your possession of the premises, lapse.
Okay, before you explain the entire point, just answer directly for me.
Now,
have you met the requirement?
Yeah, we've met the requirement. In fact, we have about 200 officers, throughout the country, and we are still counting.
Functional officers?
Yeah, functional officers.
When you say office, what do you mean?
Well, office, one, you have a place, you see, in political party office, you're talking about converging points. And then sometimes, as for the regional offices, you have to keep them, okay? You have other offices where definitely if it is not meeting time, you will not get your members coming there, So you have the chairman, for instance, who will convene a meeting and say that, look, at this point in time, can you come, and so on and so forth.
To what's his house?
Yeah, yes. Well, it could be in a house, it could be, but what we are saying is that we have structures. They are not, let's say, structures under trees. We have offices, and we have contacts, we have addresses, that is what the...
I'd like to clarify for me, because the Electoral Commission is... Because the example you gave of the chairman calling for a meeting, it could be at his house, or it could be anywhere.
Oh, yes.
Will that mean that for your membership and for your leadership,
that's right,
some of your offices are actually people's houses?
Yes, certainly.
Personal houses?
Yes, personal houses. Some have just given you, let's say, an attachment to their houses and say that, look, you can use this. I mean, they bought plastic chairs, maybe 15, 20, where when people converge, they sit on. But let us look at the significance of the law. It's talking about organizing throughout the regions, and the operative word is 2 tiers, in all the districts of the country. So, people have raised some controversies about the law. Now, if we should have 500 districts, for instance, what do we do? Because much earlier, before 2012, we didn't have 216 districts, okay? We had something like 202 or whatever districts. So, but it's talking about 2 tiers. So, operationally, we're talking about 2 tiers.
Okay.
So you don't even have to look at it. And it's talking about organizing. By the spirit and letter of this edict or whatever provision of the Constitution, it just wants every political party to be national in nature, and not to be a group or sectional or what do you call sectarian.
Okay. So that's let me just bring in this information at this point. We're just getting information that the leader of the Ghana Freedom Party, Ikea Donko, has just reached the EC headquarters, also filing her documents to meet this requirement as the EC is pushing bodies. But let me ask you, gentlemen. First, let me start with you, Kadri. Kadri, if you knew this was a requirement as far back as even the last elections, why did they have to take the EC given a deadline before you meet this requirement?
Well, I think that we have to place the issues in their rightful context. For example, we are all aware that in this country, when you go into the books, you find that we have about 24 political parties. And some of the political parties, if not for purposes of IPAC meeting, you would not even know that they are existent. The point that I want to make is this. When you come to serious political parties like the Convention People's Party, we are not waiting until the Electoral Commission to attempt to crack the whip before we now respond. In the last election, 2012, we met all the requirements. Even before 2012, 2008 and 2004, at any given point, we have our party account.
But you met this one a day before the deadline.
Yeah, and then when we are not even trying to catch up the deadline, we were just doing what we are doing. And then we felt that, well, in order not to be on, you know, on a certain side, you know, in public opinion, let's just go and submit the document. But the point that I want to stress is that in all the elections that the Convention People's Party contested, we have always actually met, you know, our constitutional obligations and requirements before entering into election. And then that is the spirit upon which our party was formed. And we are always very, you know, sure. I wanted to bring another dimension to it by those dormant, you know, inactive political parties. They are those that you will find rushing in queues trying to, you know, meet up the deadline. But for the Convention People's Party, we are organized. And I like Alaji Frimpong when he mentioned, when we was trying to take you through the law. The law talks about us organizing in the districts or in the regions of the country.
Okay.
And organization cannot be reduced to mean having offices. Organization goes beyond having offices. And that is one point that the Electoral Commissioner and the Electoral Commission has missed. And we have also said that if you attempt to examine the letter and spirit of the law, it is just to ensure that, like Kwame Nkrumah did in the 1950s when he passed, you know, a law to ensure that all political parties that were formed on regional, tribal, and ethnic basis were disbanded.
Okay, Carrie, let me hold you just briefly because we just want to get an update from the EC headquarters on which parties are meeting this deadline. Joseph Upuku-Gakpo is with us, our journalist correspondent there right now, giving us updates. Joseph, good afternoon to you.
Francis, good afternoon to you.
Right, so tell us what's happening. Which parties have made it and which ones have not?
The ones that we can confirm for a fact have made it include the Ghana Freedom Party. The leader of the party, Madame Ekiadonko, is still here at the premises of the Electoral Commission, coming in to submit documents. And the documents that she is bringing in include the audited account of her party, and as well, from the understanding that we get in, she's been submitting details of the party's offices across the country. I've been speaking to her. She tells me that up to 200 offices are located across the country, and they've been providing all of those details for the Electoral Commission. But we also understand that earlier in the day, the National Democratic Party, that's the NDP, officials from the party have also been here to submit both their audited account for last year and also details of the party's offices across the country. Now, what happens is that when the party officials come around here, they are actually referred to the registry of the Electoral Commission. And so they go in there, they hand over the documents are stamped, and then the necessary notification is given them that really they've submitted these documents to the Electoral Commission, and that the EC, as in the Commission itself and the commissioners, will be doing a review of those documents subsequently. We also know that the Convention People's Party, that's the CPP, the leader of that party, Professor Edmond Dele, was also around yesterday to submit the party's audited account,
okay,
and also the details of the parties of the across the country. So those are the parties that we know for a fact have been able to meet the deadline.
Okay, great. Joseph, hold the line. We've also been joined by the leader of the IPP, Kofi Akpaloo. He's joining us now via Skype. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Akpaloo.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Great. And I'll be speaking to you briefly to ask whether you have met this requirement. But Joseph, you've mentioned the ones who've made it. He's at the Electoral Commission headquarters right now. Do you know the others who can also meet the requirement?
It's been difficult getting information on those who haven't met the requirements and whether others have managed to come in to do this on the quiet and walk away. It's been very difficult because all the officials of the Electoral Commission are insisting that this is the transaction that for now is between the party rep and also the registry of the Electoral Commission. It's after the close of the deadline, which is around 4 p.m. today, that the necessary details will be forwarded to the officials of the commission, and then they'll be able to give us specifics on who met this deadline and who didn't.
And who did not. Interesting.
It was very difficult getting that particular detail, Francis.
The time you've mentioned is interesting, Joseph, because it's just about 20 minutes past 4. I'm sure the deadline may have elapsed, but thank you, Joseph. I'm sure we'll get more updates on this in our subsequent bulletins from the Electoral Commission headquarters. But let me speak to Mr. Akpaloo now for the IPP. Okay, it seems we've lost him there, but we'll try and re-establish contact with him to find out if his party met this requirement or not. But let me come back to the studio. Alaji, for the NDP, your argument initially was that in this day and age, 21st century, we do not need physical buildings as proof that we actually have the offices. But I will have you answer that question shortly. Kofi Akpaloo has just joined us with the, from the IPP on Skype. Kofi, good afternoon to you once again.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Right, so I was asking, for the IPP, have you met the requirements of having your offices in 2/3 of the districts across the country?
For correction, I would say we don't need offices across the country before you meet the requirement.
2/3.
The law says that you should have branches in all the 10 regions, and then you should organize into 2/3 of the districts. So having offices, having branches means that you should have regional offices. For that one, we have met it. And then also to have a national office. And at the moment, I'm speaking to you from our headquarters in 26 Cedar Crescent, Denyami, Kumasi. And I can tell you, we have met all the requirements as far as a political party operations is concerned.
Have you filed your documents at the Electoral Commission?
Come again?
Have you filed your documents at the Electoral Commission?
Oh yes, we have. We submitted all our audited accounts from 2012 to 2015, and then we have also submitted the list and the locations of our regional offices as well as our national office. All
right. Okay, Kofi, thank you for your time. Brief comments there from Kofi Akpaloo, leader of the Independent People's Party. So clearly, the IPP, they say, have met that requirement. They've submitted all their documents. But gentlemen, as we wrap up this conversation, Alaji, I was talking about the NDP and the point you make about the virtual offices. Are we looking at a push by parties like the NDP and the CPP and the IPP for this law to be amended?
Thank you very much. Francis?
Yes, Francis.
Good. The issue is that there are a lot of laws on our statute books, okay? And I think earlier on you raised the question, why didn't political parties on their own, probably comply with the law? From memory, I mean, those who have been very long in IPAC, to wait, Comrade Brew, what is it called? Ward Brew, for instance. I mean, for the whole life of the Fourth Republican administration or governance, this issue of asking political parties to comply with the law had not in the first place arisen any moment in time. So you would not look at it as a practice, that if you're a political party, you get up one day and pile up all your offices and that kind of thing. But coming back to virtual offices, the issue is that our democracy must meet ideals, of what I call laissez-faire, as much as possible. I mean, what we need is to make sure at least rule of law regulates, whatever we are doing. So if you bring too many impediments in the way of political parties, I think that it offends the ideals of democracy. I mean, look, countries like Denmark, I mean, of almost twice the size of Ghana, I mean, from check. I mean, they only need 4 provincial officers, for a political party, so that is one. Today we are trying to. But
you also recognize that the dynamics for Denmark and Ghana are completely different.
No. But I mean, at least we are all in a global system. Sometimes,
but the age of democracy are different.
Exactly, but best practices. We must learn from best practices. The point is that what are we seeking in terms of political parties? Political parties try to compete in potent ideas, in governance that impact on the welfare of people, okay? So you can have a political party that might be thinly spread in the country, but with potent ideas that will impact more positively than the so-called bigger parties which have been in government.
Okay.
So if you try and place so many impediments, unnecessary burden on us, we are rather suppressing good ideas, potent ideas. So that's what we are saying. And in this age and time, I mean, technology has shown that. I mean, people are on WhatsApp groups, social media, and so on and so forth. So for instance, to say that you strictly are looking for physical structures as offices for political parties, so that, I mean, you then qualify them as existing properly within the law. for me, offense, probably the ideals of democracy. We need some liberalism. You know, you're talking about freedom of association, so that if I am not able, for instance, despite all the good ideas that I have, and I'm cutting across thinly in a very modest manner across the country, if I don't have big monies, if I don't have big money bags like, parties, so-called big boys in government, then it means my ideas must be suppressed.
Okay.
So that is the issue.
I get your point.
So what we're saying is that for us, it's a little bit, controversial. It's not, you agree with me, it's not all the laws that are resting on our statute books that will
for the
promote
NDP,
democracy.
So for the NDP, you've reluctantly met this condition?
No, it's not a question of reluctantly. We set off doing all this and all right, but we are saying that, it's part of what we've done. We think it offends, ideals of democracy.
Kadri, let me give you the final word on this one. Now that you've met all these conditions, we're looking ahead to the bigger picture of the elections. What are the kind of things that you expect the EC to do to ensure that parties like the CPP and all other political parties get an even playing field for this election?
Well, I think you have answered it partly. What the Electoral Commission of Ghana has to do is to ensure that it creates a maximum standard of fair play for all, the political actors, the big and the so-called, small, which some of us have objected to. And apart from that, we have to also bear in mind as a people that the Electoral Commission is working within the remit of the law and then cannot do something outside the law. So what the Electoral Commission can do from the Convention People's Party, our view will be that it should make sure that it should remain firm and fair. It should actually comply to the laws of our country. And once the laws are being adhered to strictly with sense of fairness and then sense of justice, I believe that at the end of 2016, there is going to be peace and tranquility in the country. But where the Electoral Commission conducts itself in a way that gives us cause to doubt its commitment to fairness and justice, then I think that if it continues on that tangent, then there can be dark clouds of rain in the sky.
Okay, Kadri, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Alhaji Frimpong of the NDP, Kadri of the CPP, Kofi Akpaloo of the IPP. Thank you, sir, for joining us here on The Pulse for your contribution to this program on whether or not all the parties have met this requirement today. But there's another statement I need to bring to your attention that we are receiving in relation to the businessman Alfred Agbeshi-Woyome. We just got this a few minutes ago, and let me read the details for you. The deputy sheriff's officers attached 4 residential properties of Mr. Alfred Agbeshi-Woyome, the third defendant in the above-mentioned suit, in execution of a judgment of the Supreme Court dated the 29th of July 2014. I have been directed by the Attorney General to request you to value one of the residential properties situated at Kehe, Accra, belonging to the said Alfred Agbeshi-Woyome on Thursday, the 2nd of June 2016. By a copy of this letter, Mr. Alfred Agbeshi-Woyome is being informed of the intended valuation exercise to grant access to officers from the Valuation Division of the Lands Commission to undertake the assignment. Mr. Charles Latte from the Civil Registry of the Attorney General's Department will accompany your officers on Thursday, the 2nd of June 2016 at 10 a.m. prompt and counting on your usual cooperation. This letter is signed by the Chief State Attorney, Dorothy Afriye Ansah. That's the news coming in right now on one of the properties of Alfred Agbeshi-Woyome to be valued as part of meeting the execution of a judgment of the Supreme Court on the 29th of July 2014. That's what we just received a few minutes ago. We'll delve into this a bit more later on in subsequent bulletins. At this point, we'll go for a break. We'll come back and bring you sports here on The Pulse. Stay with us.